80 years after the end of World War II, China and Japan just shook hands on something no one saw coming, to start another war. But it's not with each other this time. No, their new target is the United States. Along with South Korea, these three Asian giants are gearing up to fight back against Trump's latest policy. And for Washington, that might be even more dangerous.
China, Japan and South Korea have decided to fight Donald Trump's tariffs head on.
Well, the clock is ticking towards what President Trump has called America's Liberation Day. He says he will unveil a massive slate of import taxes on all countries on Wednesday.
China, 67%. That's tariffs.
So what pushed China, Japan, and South Korea to suddenly unite against the US? Could this unexpected alliance reshape the entire global map? And is America ready for what's coming? Or is this just the beginning of something much bigger? Let's dive into all the details in this video. Just recently, China, Japan, and South Korea had their first economic meeting in 5 years, and things got interesting really quick. Not long after the meeting wrapped, a Chinese state media-affiliated social media account dropped a bold claim. The three countries had agreed to team up and hit back at US tariffs, which Seoul had called somewhat exaggerated. The Weibo post came from Yu Yuan Tantian, linked to China's CCTV, and it painted a picture of a united Asian front ready to challenge President Donald Trump's growing list of tariffs. It also claimed that Japan and South Korea were looking to China for semiconductor raw materials, while China was eyeing chip products from both countries. According to the post, all three sides agreed to beef up supply chain coordination and get serious about export control discussions. But when reporters asked Seoul if the trio had really agreed to confront Washington together, a spokesperson from South Korea's trade ministry said the idea of a joint response to US tariffs had been exaggerated. They pointed to the actual joint statement, which focused more on good old economic cooperation than launching a trade war. The official added that the ministers had exchanged views on the global trade situation, but mostly reaffirmed their commitment to keep talking and working together economically. That's about as diplomatic a shrug as you can get. The joint statement did highlight plans to accelerate negotiations on a long-awaited free trade agreement between South Korea, Japan, and China, aimed at boosting both regional and international trade. Japan's foreign ministry, for now, stayed silent. This three-way meeting took place just as Trump prepares to announce another wave of tariffs on what he's proudly calling Liberation Day, shaking up the US's trading relationships once again. And while China, Japan, and South Korea are all close trading partners with the US, they have also got their own tensions, like territorial disputes and lingering resentment over Japan's decision to release wastewater from Fukushima. So while the idea of unity sounds great online, reality, as always, is a bit messier. Donald Trump is once again going full throttle with his favorite economic move, tariffs. Love them or hate them, they've become the bread and butter of his trade policy. And now, they're back in a big way. On April 2nd, standing in the White House Rose Garden like he was launching a new product line, Trump rolled out massive new tariffs covering nearly everything the US imports from nearly everyone. That's right, almost all goods from almost all countries. You name it, it probably got taxed. Trump said these tariffs were the key to shrinking America's trade deficit and pumping life into US manufacturing. According to him, this was about economic independence, making America buy American and punishing countries that, in his view, have been playing the US for decades. But economists were not exactly popping champagne about this. Many warned that these tariff hikes could hit American wallets hard, raising prices for businesses, boosting inflation, and potentially slowing down the whole economy. Investor and philanthropist Warren Buffett didn't sugarcoat it either. In a recent CBS interview, he said that tariffs feel like an act of war to some degree. Even Mike Pence, Trump's own former VP, took a swipe. He called the new tariffs the largest peacetime tax hike in US history, and said they're nearly 10 times bigger than anything the Trump-Pence administration pushed before. He warned that the average American family could end up paying more than $3,500 a year just from the added costs. So, when did all this tariff drama kick off again? Over the past few months, Trump's been on a roll, announcing, threatening, delaying, and then re-announcing tariffs on everything from steel and aluminum to cars and electronics. And this time, Even allies like Canada and Mexico are on the receiving end. According to Kiplinger, Trump's dream scenario is scrapping income taxes altogether and replacing them with tariffs. He's even floated the idea of launching a brand new government body called the External Revenue Service. Yes, the ERS, to collect all that money. His latest batch of tariffs that hit on April 3rd were branded with names like Liberation Day and Economic Independence Day, because apparently no trade war is complete without a catchy title. Naturally, the markets didn't take this news well. Right after Trump's Rose Garden speech, stock futures took a nosedive. Investors seemed to be thinking the same thing. Wait, what now? And if you thought only Democrats were pushing back, think again. A group of Republican senators actually crossed the aisle to back a resolution from Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. The resolution aimed to block the tariffs Trump placed on Canadian goods by challenging the national emergency he used to justify them. It passed by a narrow 51-48 vote, showing just how divided even his own party is over the whole thing. So yeah, keeping track of all these tariffs is like trying to follow a soap opera with surprise plot twists every week. One day it's new duties, the next it's delays, then someone gets voted out, someone else tweets a comeback, and we're all just bracing for the next episode. Global trading partners did not stay quiet either after Trump's latest tariff mic drop. While the full retaliation plans are still loading, several countries were already making decisions, or at least raising eyebrows. Canada and Mexico were currently in full negotiation mode, trying to carve out some breathing room under the USMCA rules. But they were clearly rattled, with concerns growing about the broader ripple effects this could cause across their economies. The European Union wasn't thrilled either. Officials in Brussels were reportedly dusting off their countermeasure playbooks, while leaving the door slightly cracked for talks, just in case there was a diplomatic off-ramp. China, unsurprisingly, fired back with sharp criticism. Beijing hinted that a response was on the way, and now we know what that response is: an alliance with Japan and South Korea. All this backlash came after Trump's April 2nd announcement in the White House Rose Garden. In a show-and-tell moment that felt more like a PowerPoint from a reality TV boardroom, Trump even held up a chart showing different countries' tariff rates and what the US plans to hit them with in return. Here's a taste of what's on that chart. China reportedly charges 67%, so the US will answer with 34%. Vietnam is getting slapped with 46%. Japan gets 24%, South Korea 25%, Switzerland 31%, the European Union 20%. The UK gets the baseline minimum of 10%, the same as most countries under this new plan. Trump called these numbers kind reciprocal, not full reciprocal, whatever that means in Trump language. As part of this tariff wave, Trump also announced a 25% tariff on all imported cars and auto parts, with key auto components like engines, transmissions, and electrical systems facing the hammer by May 3rd. Vehicles and parts from Canada and Mexico that meet USMCA requirements will be safe, for now, until the administration figures out how to tax parts with too much foreign DNA. When asked whether he was worried about car prices going up, Trump told NBC News he didn't care. He said if foreign automakers raise prices, Americans would just buy US-made vehicles instead. Problem solved. Meanwhile, analysts from the Tax Foundation and other economic think tanks have been crunching the numbers. They say the auto tariffs are pretty much guaranteed to raise consumer prices. But just how much depends on how widely and deeply the new rules get applied. And Trump's not done. He's been dropping hints about upcoming tariffs that could hit lumber, pharmaceuticals, and who knows what else. At a recent press gaggle, he told reporters that it was time to bring drug manufacturing back home. He said the US shouldn't rely on other countries when it comes to pharmaceuticals, drugs, and pharmaceuticals. Yes, he doubled up on that word for extra emphasis. He's floated a possible 25% tariff on imported meds, which could hit products coming from China, Europe, Canada, and Mexico. But no one knows yet when it'll happen, or how far it'll go. Now you see why China, Japan, and South Korea felt the need to huddle up and start planning a joint response. In the past, meetings between China, Japan, and South Korea were often tense, focused more on historic grudges and regional disputes. The last time they met in 2019, the world was a different place. Trump wasn't in office, COVID hadn't hit, and global trade was still relatively stable. On December 24, 2019, leaders from Japan, China, and South Korea met in Chengdu for the 8th Trilateral Summit, marking 20 years since they first decided to try this three's a crowd style of diplomacy. The meeting, held in peak end-of-year mode, wasn't just about handshakes and photo ops. They rolled up their sleeves and got into everything from environmental issues to North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Japan's then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, yes, the longest-serving PM in Japanese history, delivered a forward-looking pitch. He acknowledged that the past 2 decades of trilateral cooperation had made progress, especially in practical, future-oriented areas. Now, he said, it was time to get serious about the next decade, starting with some solid, tangible efforts in sectors where these 3 countries are already global leaders. And not just for their own benefit, but for the wider region and even the world. Abe pointed to the G20 Osaka summit earlier that year, where the 3 nations, plus the rest of the crew, signed off on key commitments around trade, tackling marine plastic waste, and investing in high-quality infrastructure. He proposed carrying those ideas forward through the trilateral framework and laid out what he called the 3 E's to guide their cooperation: environment, elderly society, and exchange. On the environmental front, Abe said the issue of marine litter wasn't just drifting across seas, it was drifting across borders. He welcomed the progress made under the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision and praised the environment ministers of all 3 countries for finally turning words into action. Japan, China, and South Korea, he said, should aim to lead the world in solving the marine plastic problem. Next, aging populations. Japan's already the poster child for this, with more seniors than sushi spots. Abe noted that South Korea was quickly catching up, and China had the largest elderly population on the planet. He suggested the 3 nations pool their knowledge to create healthier, more active societies for older citizens. Japan, he added, was ready to share its experience and best practices with the international community. As for the exchange part, Abe said that no matter how rocky things got at the government level, person-to-person relationships were the real glue holding this trio together. He was glad the 3 countries had already surpassed their goal of 30 million annual people-to-people exchanges by 2020, 2 years early, no less. He gave a shout-out to the Campus Asia education programs and was clearly hyped about the Olympic relay from Pyeongchang to Tokyo and on to Beijing. He said it would be a perfect opportunity for cultural, tourism, and sports exchanges. Abe wrapped up that section by saying Japan wanted to build a win-win-win setup using those 3 E's. And yes, he actually used that phrase. Now, on to North Korea. Abe was clear. Total denuclearization is the end goal. He emphasized that Japan, China, and South Korea needed to stay firmly behind the US. North Korea talks and push for full dismantlement of all weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missiles. He stressed the importance of enforcing UN Security Council resolutions and called North Korea's missile launches a flat-out violation. Abe also repeated Japan's long-standing position that it wants to normalize relations with Pyongyang, but only after resolving the key issues, including nuclear weapons, missiles, and the abduction of Japanese citizens. He asked for the continued support of both China and South Korea, and they expressed understanding. On trade, Abe said the G20 Osaka summit had laid out a clear path: push for a fair, transparent, and rules-based trade environment. He argued that the multilateral trading system, with the WTO at its core, needed strengthening, and the 3 countries should lead the way. He also emphasized the importance of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, and said Japan would continue pushing for a high-quality deal that went beyond the basics. He said the Japan-China-South Korea FTA also needed to move forward with substance, not just as a symbolic agreement. Then came infrastructure. Abe highlighted the importance of building in a way that's open, efficient, and sustainable. He mentioned that at the G20, all 3 countries had agreed on principles for quality infrastructure investment. He said Japan, China, and South Korea, being economic powerhouses in the region, should lead by example and get these projects off the ground in line with those principles. The leaders agreed that their three economies made up a massive chunk of global GDP, trade, and investment. That gave them serious responsibility and serious potential to shape the future. They committed to continue pushing for a modern, balanced, and mutually beneficial RCEP and a high-quality trilateral FTA. Abe then brought up Japan's vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific built on the rule of law. He said Japan would keep aligning its efforts with ASEAN's outlook on the Indo-Pacific and encourage China and South Korea to do the same, while respecting ASEAN unity. Finally, Abe touched on global issues like climate change, disaster risk, energy, health, and education. He said Japan had led the way on many of these at both the G20 and the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD 7. And now, he said, it was time for Japan, China, and South Korea to team up and tackle those problems together, especially when it came to climate and environmental challenges. The three leaders wrapped things up by agreeing on the need for more cooperation on environmental protection, better support for aging societies, stronger cultural and educational exchange, and shared responsibility in stabilizing global trade and security.